The ship's emergency lights pulsed a sickly red, casting long, distorted shadows across the cramped bridge. A cacophony of shrieking alarms had just moments before reached a fever pitch, only to abruptly silence. Commander Jax, strapped tightly into his pilot's seat, listened to the sudden, unsettling quiet. The only sound now was the ragged intake of Specialist Lena's breath beside him. Their battered exploratory vessel, the Stardust Rambler, hung in an unfamiliar void, its jump drive core having explosively decompiled milliseconds ago. Jax ran a hand through his closely cropped hair, checking the external viewports. The Inkai blackness outside was not empty, it was full, not with stars but with light, thousands upon thousands of distant, glittering structures. Some pulsed with internal illumination, others glided with a stately grace that spoke of unimaginable mass. Directly ahead, a colossal construct, far larger than any planetary city, rotated with an unnerving precision. It bristled with elegant spires, immense docking pylons that stretched like skeletal fingers, and geometric patterns of light that could only be weapon emplacements. Smaller craft, sleek and obsidian, flitted around it like a disciplined swarm of insects. Lena's voice, usually calm and analytical, was laced with a hint of awe. "Commander, my scanners, they're failing. Readings are off the charts. This isn't charted space. This isn't anything we've ever seen." Jax leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the gargantuan structure. "No kidding. What about comms, any hail?" Lena shook her head, her fingers dancing across a shattered console, just a wall of static, and a repeating energy signature. Consistent, like a beacon, but immensely powerful. As if on cue, a new, deep resonance rumbled through the Rambler's hull. It wasn't a sound so much as a pressure, vibrating through bone. Then, on the main comms panel, a series of symbols flashed, rapidly translating. An automated voice, synthesized with an almost melodic quality, spoke. "Unidentified vessel. You have entered the sovereign territory of the Varlian Ascendancy. Cease all movement. Prepare for immediate boarding. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force." Jax exchanged a look with Lena. "So, an empire, just our luck." Lena gave a mirthless chuckle. "At least they're polite about it, sort of." A shadow fell across the main viewport. A docking arm, impossibly long and segmented like a segmented claw, extended from the colossal station. It moved with a slow, deliberate majesty before locking onto the Rambler's hull with a soft thud that reverberated through the ship. Moments later, the airlock cycled. A soft hiss, then a scent sterile, metallic, with a faint undertone of ozone. Then they entered. They were tall, slender beings, easily a head taller than Jax. Their forms were covered in what appeared to be layered, crystalline armor that shimmered with internal light. Their helmets were smooth, featureless, reflecting the ship's dim lighting like polished obsidian. Weapons, long and elegant, pulsed with a contained energy, pointed directly at the humans. One figure, whose armor bore intricate golden etchings, stepped forward. Its voice, when it spoke, was a rich baritone, resonating with a deep, confident authority. The universal translator struggled for a moment, then caught up. "By the decree of the Grand Conclave, you are taken into custody for unauthorized penetration of the Ascendancy's inner sanctum. You will be escorted to the Grand Tribunal for assessment." Jax unstrapped himself, rising slowly. He stretched, a deliberate, casual motion. "Well, that's one way to greet guests. Any chance we could just turn around?" The Varlian leader's helmet tilted almost imperceptibly. Its posture remained rigid, unyielding. "Your vessel is damaged beyond repair for independent travel. Your options are limited to cooperation or dissolution." Jax simply shrugged. "Figured. Lead the way, then." The Varlian seemed to hesitate for a fraction of a second, an almost imperceptible shift that spoke volumes of their surprise. They clearly expected fear, resistance, perhaps even supplication. What they received was a man who looked like he was being asked to move his car. Jax had seen worse. He'd seen a whole planet's surface boil off when a rogue star decided to pay a visit. He'd seen a jump-drive tier open a pocket of localized null space, nearly erasing a freighter and its crew. This, by comparison, was a Tuesday morning traffic stop. The escort led them through a bewildering labyrinth of corridors. The Varlian vessel or station or whatever it was defied logic. Walls were seamless, glowing softly with internal light, and the floors felt solid beneath their boots, polished to a mirror sheen. Every so often, they passed recessed alcoves where more Varlian guards stood, silent and imposing, their featureless helmets tracking the humans' every move. The air was cool, processed, devoid of any natural scent. It felt sterile, almost oppressive in its perfection. The Grand Tribunal was a breathtaking, if somewhat overwhelming, sight. It opened into a chamber so vast, it felt like being suspended in an open void. Pillars, easily towering a kilometer high, rose from the floor, each sculpted with intricate, flowing designs that seemed to shift and reform in the ambient light. At the far end, atop a multi-tiered dais, sat a singular throne crafted from shimmering, iridescent material, radiating an ethereal glow. On it, a figure sat, draped in robes of deep violet, their helmet a larger, more ornate version of the guards, indicating supreme authority. This was, presumably, the Grand Arbiter, or perhaps even the Conclave leader. The Varlian leader did not speak immediately. Instead, its helmeted gaze swept over Jax and Lena, lingering, assessing, as if weighing two unfamiliar specimens. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, until it hummed with anticipation. Finally, a voice, clearer and more resonant than the automated translation, filled the hall. It was layered, as if multiple voices spoke in perfect unison. Unknown beings, you trespass into the heart of the Varlian ascendancy. Your vessel is crude, your technology unclassified. Speak your purpose before your fate is decreed. Lena shifted uncomfortably beside Jax, a barely perceptible twitch. Jax stepped forward, meeting the helmeted gaze of the Varlian leader without flinching. No purpose, really. Our ship had a bad day. Jump drive went critical. We got thrown here. As for fate, he let his eyes sweep across the impossibly vast chamber, the imposing Varlian figures, the silent, awestruck guards. He lingered on the pristine, almost clinical environment. I've seen worse. A collective murmur, like the rustle of dry leaves, rippled through the Varlian court. The layered voice from the throne spoke again, its tone now laced with an edge of something akin to disbelief. You have seen worse. You stand within the very heart of the Varlian ascendancy, a power that has brought countless star-spanning species to heel, and you claim to have endured more hardship? Jax's tone remained flat, devoid of sarcasm or fear, a simple statement of fact. Yeah. Where I come from, we bury people by the thousands before breakfast, and we don't even have a throne room for it. Just a shovel and a prayer. Lena winced slightly beside him. Jax, ever the diplomat. The Varlian leader on the throne was utterly still for a long moment. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, it raised a hand. Its fingers were long, multi-jointed, covered in the same crystalline plating as its armor. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken, a palpable tension. Interesting. You are either astonishingly foolish or forged in something far more rigorous than our sensors detected. We shall determine which. The Varlian leader gestured sharply, and two figures, larger and more heavily armored than the regular guards, stepped forward from the shadows near the dais. Their crystalline armor was a darker, duller hue, and their weapons were not elegant energy lances, but short, brutal-looking mauls that thrummed with a low, potent vibration. Take them to the proving ground, the Varlian leader commanded. Determine their resilience. Lena whispered, a question barely audible. The proving ground? Jax's expression was unreadable. Probably not a spa day. The two massive Varlian enforcers flanked them, their silent, imposing presence undeniable. They didn't shove or prod, their mere proximity was enough to guide. The corridors they now traversed were different, narrower, starker. The seamless walls of the throne room gave way to exposed conduits and reinforced plating. The air grew warmer, carrying a faint scent of heated metal and something organic like ozone or musk. Lena's brow furrowed. This isn't ceremonial. This is functional. That's because it is, Jax replied, his gaze constantly sweeping, assessing. Every shadow, every vent, every junction. Functional means it's designed to do a job, and the job they want us to do is prove we're tougher than we look. They descended a wide ramp, not of polished crystalline material, but of heavy, riveted metal, into a vast, cavernous chamber. The air here was hot, heavy, humid, with the low thrum of massive machinery running deep beneath the floor. The chamber was circular, perhaps 100 meters across, its walls curving inward and rising to dizzying heights, lined with tiers of alien spectators. Some were Varlian, others were species Jax couldn't categorize, but all shared the same posture of eager anticipation. It felt familiar, a gladiatorial arena. A voice, amplified and distorted, boomed across the chamber, echoing unnaturally. By the decree of the Grand Conclave, these unclassified beings shall undergo the trial of resilience. If they endure, they may speak of their origins. If they fail, their components shall be assimilated into the Ascendancy's biomass recyclers. Ah! A low, collective hum, a chilling sound of alien expectation, vibrated through the air. Two gates, heavy and reinforced, slid open at opposite ends of the arena. From one, Jax and Lena were prodded forward. The floor was rough, coated in a fine, gritty dust that clung to their boots. From the other, something stepped out. It was immense, easily 4 meters tall, its body a mass of thick, segmented chitinous plates, rippling with powerful muscle. Its head was small, low-slung, with multiple dark, unblinking eyes and a gaping maw filled with rows of needle-like teeth. It moved with a disturbing fluidity for its size, its massive forelimbs ending in wicked, curved claws that scraped against the metal floor, leaving gouges. Lena swore under her breath. "We don't have any weapons." Jax's eyes scanned the arena floor, the walls, the crowd. "We've got the floor." Lena blinked. "What does that? Even—" The creature charged. It moved faster than something of its bulk had any right to, covering the distance in blurring strides. Jax didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lena by the arm, yanking her hard to the side. The creature's claws tore into the spot where they had been standing, sending up a spray of dust and metal shards. Jax hit the ground rolling, his hand closing around a loose, jagged piece of metal plating that had been torn from the floor. It wasn't much, but in a fight, anything could be a weapon. He came up on one knee, not facing the creature but away from it, and hurled the metal shard. Not at its chest, but at the mass of unblinking eyes. The chunk bounced harmlessly off the thick, chitinous armor around the creature's face, but the distraction bought him a precious second. Split. Jax barked, and they moved in opposite directions, forcing the creature to pivot, momentarily unsure which target to pursue. Lena, quick-thinking, spotted a broken, twisted length of pipe lying near the wall. She snatched it up and swung it like a bat as the creature finally committed to her, its massive head snapping. She ducked just in time, the monster's mandibles tearing through the pipe with ease, sending sparks flying. Jax didn't waste the moment. He closed in on the creature's flank, slamming his boot into the back of one of its spindly, jointed legs. The joint bent inward with a sickening pop, and the creature shrieked, a sound like tearing metal mixed with boiling water. It turned on him instantly, mandibles snapping, but Jax was already backing away, keeping his stance low. Lena caught on. She feinted left, then lunged right, jabbing the broken pipe into the soft gap between two plates at the base of the creature's neck. It wasn't deep, but it was enough to make the thing reel back. Jack stepped in with a low, brutal kick to the injured leg again. This time, the joint gave out completely, and the creature crashed to the ground with a deafening thud. The crowd erupted, not in shock, but in that same low, hungry hum. Jax didn't hesitate. He grabbed the jagged edge of the pipe from Lena and with a grunt of effort drove it into the creature's throat with all the force he had. There was a spray of dark fluid, a horrible gurgle, and then the creature went still. The hum of the crowd rose to a fever pitch. Another gate opened behind them. Lena wiped fluid from her arm on her trousers. "Please tell me that was it." Jax shook his head. "They don't call it a proving ground for one trial." Two more creatures came through the gate, smaller this time, but faster, moving on four limbs, their bodies sleek and segmented like giant armored hounds. Their mouths were filled with rows of needle teeth, and a thick, clear fluid dripped from them, sizzling faintly where it touched the floor. Jax stepped back, scanning the pit again. No more debris big enough to serve as a weapon. "Stay moving," he said. "If they circle, we're finished." The creatures split instantly, one coming for each of them. Lena dodged her first, but the thing pivoted like a snake, lunging again. Its teeth grazed her arm, slicing through her jacket. The fabric smoked where the corrosive saliva touched it. Jax had less room. His opponent came straight in, jaws wide. He sidestepped, grabbed the thing's neck plating, and wrenched hard, using its momentum to smash it into the wall. The impact dazed it, but didn't break anything. Lena was holding her own, barely, using quick footwork to keep out of reach. But one slip would mean downfall. Jax made a decision. He drove his knee into the side of his opponent's skull, stunning it long enough for him to grab one of its four limbs. With a violent twist, he tore it free in a spray of that same sizzling fluid. The thing screamed, high and keening, and Jax didn't give it the chance to recover. He jammed the severed limb down its throat until it collapsed, twitching. Lena's opponent noticed too late. Jax charged across the pit, the severed limb still in hand, and slammed it into the side of the second creature's head. The blow staggered it just long enough for Lena to grab its neck and snap it in a sharp, efficient motion. They both stood there, panting, staring at the inert forms. The hum of the crowd was now deafening. Above them, the Grand Conclave leader was on its feet. "I see," the layered voice boomed, cutting through the noise. "You are not prey." Jax met its gaze from the pit. "Told you." The Varlian leader tilted its helmet. "And yet, you bleed." Jax glanced down at his arm, a shallow slice from one of the hounds, already crusting over. He looked back up. "Yeah, so do you." The Varlian leader did not react immediately. Then, after a long pause, it raised its crystalline hand and snapped its multi-jointed fingers. The gates to the pit opened again, not for more creatures, but for the guards. They came down in perfect formation. Their weapons pointed not at Jax and Lena, but toward the crowd, as if keeping the other spectators from interfering. "Bring them to me," the Varlian leader ordered. The walk back to the tribunal chamber felt longer this time. The guards didn't shove them. They didn't have to. The respect in their posture was subtle, but it was there. When they stood before the Varlian leader again, it rose from its throne and descended the steps itself. Up close, Jax could see that the crystalline plating on its form wasn't pristine. It was battle-worn, scratched, and pitted with old damage. "You were unarmed," the Varlian leader said. "Yet you vanquished the Proving Ground's first 3 trials in minutes. No fear, no hesitation. Why?" Jax didn't hesitate with his answer. "Because where I'm from, hesitation brings downfall, and fear is just the thing that makes it happen faster." The Varlian leader studied him for a long moment, then turned slightly toward its court. Perhaps these humans have a place in the ascendancy, after all. Jax caught the subtle shift in the tone of the crowd, some murmurs of agreement, some of discontent. Whatever the Varlian had planned next, it wouldn't be simple. And Jax wasn't sure yet if surviving the Proving Ground was a victory or just the start of something far more complicated. The Varlian leader did not return to its throne right away. It stood in front of Jax and Lena, the weight of the entire court pressing in like a physical thing. Every Varlian in the chamber was watching, and Jax could feel their unspoken verdicts hanging in the air like blades. "You have survived the proving ground," the Varlian leader said. "That grants you the right to stand here and speak without chains, but survival in the ascendancy is not about strength alone. It is about knowing which enemies you may face directly and which you must dismantle in the dark." Lena muttered under her breath. "Great, so now it's politics." Jax didn't respond. He kept his gaze locked on the Varlian leader, but his ears tracked the shuffling in the court. Crystalline robes swishing, armor clinking, low murmurs passing between Varlian nobles. The Varlian leader gestured toward them. "You are outsiders. The court sees you as intruders. Some see you as curiosities, others as threats." Jax gave the faintest shrug. "Sounds familiar." One of the Varlian nobles stepped forward from the crowd. It was tall, impossibly slender, with skin that shimmered like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with an unsettling internal light. Its robes were intricate, threaded with what looked like living filaments. "I am High Prelate Xylos," the noble said, its voice smooth but sharp, like a blade being honed. "And I say the humans are an affront. They trespass in our space, defeat ascendancy beasts in the Conclave's own arena, and speak as if they have the right to stand as equals." It let the words hang for a moment, its gaze sweeping over Jax with open disdain. "I demand they be put to the trial of silent contemplation." A ripple of interest passed through the court. Lena's brow furrowed. "I'm guessing that's not a friendly dinner." The Varlian leader's gaze slid toward Xylos. "The trial of silent contemplation is no spectacle, High Prelate Xylos. It is mental destruction for most who enter." "All the better to see what they truly are," Xylos replied smoothly. "If they endure, perhaps they are worthy. If not, the ascendancy wastes no further thought on their existence." Jax's jaw tightened. He knew the type. Different face, different world, but the same smug tone he'd heard from bureaucrats and arrogant officials who loved watching others fail. "Fine," Jax said before Lena could speak. "We'll do your trial." Lena turned her head sharply. "Commander!" Jax's voice was flat. "We already proved we can survive things that want to vanquish us face to face. Now they want to see if we can do it when it's uglier. We can." The Varlian leader regarded him for a moment, then inclined its helmet slightly. "So be it. The trial begins at the next illumination cycle. Until then, you will be housed in guest quarters." Its gaze hardened. "Do not mistake this for mercy." The guest quarters were nothing more than a converted storage bay with a pair of narrow bunks bolted to the floor and a single wall vent that exhaled warm, recycled air. The door wasn't physically locked, but Jax could feel the low hum of a containment field in the frame. Lena dropped onto one of the bunks. "You know, you could have at least asked what the trial of silent contemplation is before you agreed." Jax sat on the opposite bunk, elbows on his knees. "Didn't matter. If I said no, they'd dissolve us anyway. At least this way we choose the method of our evaluation." Lena shook her head. "Choosing the method doesn't mean walking into a mental trap with a smile." Jax didn't answer. His mind was already turning the possibilities over. Trials, gauntlets, arenas, every culture had its way of proving dominance. The difference here was that the Varlian leader seemed just as curious about them as the court was hostile. That curiosity might keep them intact if they could play it right. Hours passed. The light in the ceiling dimmed to a dull glow, signaling the shift into the station's resting cycle. The hum in the doorframe cut out and the panel slid open. 2 guards entered. Not the massive enforcers from before, but tall, slender beings with armor that seemed fused directly to their skin. They didn't speak, only motioned for Jax and Lena to follow. The trial's location wasn't in the fortress's ceremonial halls, nor in the proving pits. The guards led them down service corridors, past unmarked bulkheads, into the kind of maintenance shafts that smelled of ozone and hot metal. Eventually, they came to a massive, circular hatch. One guard pressed its palm against a panel, and the hatch rolled open with a hiss. Beyond it was darkness, so complete it seemed to swallow the light spilling in from the corridor. The other guard handed each of them a small, smooth orb. It was cool to the touch and seemed to hum with a faint, internal energy. "No other tools," the guard said, its voice like grinding stone. "No light, no map. Endure until the second illumination cycle and the trial is complete." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Endure what?" The guard only bared a set of teeth that looked like shards of obsidian. "You will know soon enough." Jax tested the weight of the orb in his hand. It felt inert, like a mental conduit. He stepped through the hatch without another word. Lena followed, and the door sealed behind them, cutting off the last hint of light. The darkness was absolute, not the kind you got in a city blackout, not the kind where your eyes eventually adjusted. This was deep, unyielding black, thick and smothering. Jax kept his breathing slow, listening. Somewhere far off there was movement. "Sounds like," Lena whispered, then stopped as another sound cut her off. A slow, wet, dragging noise, followed by a faint, rhythmic tapping, like something with multiple limbs moving across metal. Jax's instinct screamed. This wasn't physical. This was mental. He motioned for Lena to focus on the orb, and they began edging along what felt like a wall, one hand trailing against it to keep direction. The tapping grew louder. Something brushed against Jax's boot, light, quick. Too small to be a physical threat, but it moved with the confidence of something that wasn't afraid. Lena hissed. "Something's behind us, not physical. It's inside my head. The orb, it's a psionic amplifier." Jax didn't turn immediately. He waited until the feeling was close. Close enough that he could hear the faint, insidious whisper of a voice directly in his mind, not translated but resonating with pure primal fear. "You are worthless. You are alone. Your species is fragile, doomed to fall." Then he spun, dropping low, focusing his own will, not on fighting the mental intrusion directly, but on shielding himself. He imagined a wall, thick and unyielding, built from every harsh environment he'd ever survived, every moment of despair he'd conquered. The mental pressure met his shield, skidding off before biting into a small, softer part of his consciousness. There was a screech, high and furious, an internal scream as the psionic entity recoiled. Lena lunged in beside him, her own mental defenses flaring, a flash of pure, focused, analytical thought that severed the connection. Something heavy thudded against the invisible wall, then slid to the floor, dissipating. The smell hit next, an acrid, almost burning mental tang. "One down," Jax said quietly, the words echoing in his own mind. They didn't have long to recover. From somewhere deeper in the mental darkness came more clicks, this time in multiples, each carrying the weight of a different, soul-crushing despair. Lena swallowed. They're hunting in packs, mental predators. The next hour was nothing but evasion and concentration. They never saw their attackers clearly, only felt their presence as insidious whispers, claws scraping against the edges of their sanity, the flash of teeth in the briefest glints of alien malevolence. Jax fought without hesitation, his mental parries aimed for weaknesses, for gaps in the entity's psychological attacks. Lena kept pace, grunting with effort each time she reinforced their collective mental wall. The pressure grew, the darkness more treacherous. They lost track of how many they had defeated. At one point they found a narrow mental alcove, a recess in the onslaught just big enough for them to regroup. They took it, catching their breath. Lena leaned back against the imagined wall. "This is insane. They dump us in here with things we can't perceive. No idea how to navigate." "That's the point," Jax said, his voice tight with concentration. "This isn't about defeating the creatures. It's about watching us endure the kind of mental assault that wears you down until you make a mistake." Lena's voice was strained. "And when we make that, Mistake! Jax's grip tightened on the orb. We don't. They moved again, following a faint current of mental air, Jax's best guess at finding another exit or at least a defensible spot. The clicking noises had thinned, but the silence was worse. Then came the whisper. It wasn't in a language but a raw, unsettling emotion. Greed, power, closer this time. Lena tensed. That's not one of the creatures. No, Jax said, his tone low. That's someone using the trial as cover. They moved slower now, their mental defenses poised. The emotions drew closer until two figures, not physical but mental constructs, stepped into the faintest glow spilling from a crack in the wall of their shared consciousness. They weren't Varlian guards. They weren't arena beasts. They were humanoid, slender, cloaked in dark, shimmering mental fabric that broke up their outlines, masks covering their faces. The weapons they wielded weren't blades. They were mental projections of short-barreled firearms, crackling with raw psionic energy. Lena's eyes widened. Assassins? Jax didn't waste breath. He dove forward before the first mental shot could line up, his own mental construct punching up under the first assassin's arm and into its conceptual ribs. The figure convulsed and dissipated without a sound. Lena lunged for the second, grabbing the weapon arm and wrenching it sideways as the psionic blast went off. The flash was blinding in their shared mental space, and the sound made Jax's mind ring. Lena drove her knee into the assassin's conceptual gut, then slammed her own mental blade into the side of the masked head. Both constructs dissolved. Jax crouched, pulling the psionic firearm from the vanished assassin's grip. It was light, alien in design, but the trigger and grip were intuitive enough. They weren't here for the trial, Lena said. They were here for us. Xylos, Jax said. He's not waiting for the trial to finish. They kept moving after that, faster now. Whatever the trial of silent contemplation was supposed to be, it had turned into an ambush. And that meant every minute they stayed in the mental darkness was another chance for someone to finish what Xylos had started. Hours blurred together. The glow from the mental crack in the wall was the only real light they felt, until the faintest shift in the air told Jax they were near a larger opening. They emerged into a vast, open mental chamber, dimly lit by strips of pale psychic light embedded in the ceiling. At the far end was another hatch, the kind that meant an exit. Between them and it were three more of the mental pack creatures, crouched low, their non-existent eyes reflecting the light. Behind them, watching from a raised platform of pure thought, stood High Prelate Xylos himself. Jax smiled coldly. Guess we made it to the finals. Do you wish to learn more about the challenges these harsh worlders will face? Subscribe and like for the next part of their incredible journey. And let me know in the comments, where in this vast galaxy are you tuning in from? The three creatures crouched in the dim psychic light, their conceptual bodies low and tense, their mental tendrils twitching like coiled whips. The mental floor beneath them bore deep, phantom gouges, signs they had fought and fed here before, on the very minds of those trapped within. Their unseen mouths hung open slightly, a thick, corrosive despair dripping and sizzling where it touched the conceptual steel of the chamber. Jax did not look at them first. He looked at High Prelate Xylos, whose mental construct stood on the raised platform with the posture of someone convinced nothing in this internal realm could touch him. Xylos's silver eyes were like polished coins, cold and reflective, even as a mental projection. Two armored figures flanked him, not physical guards, but powerful psionic constructs, radiating pure, unyielding will. Easily 4 meters tall with armor that shifted and flexed as if part of their very consciousness. Their hands ended not in fingers, but in hooked mental claws. Lena muttered without taking her eyes off the approaching mental beasts. Pretty sure the rules do not say the trial ends with the guy who ordered it watching. Jax's grip tightened on the psionic firearm he had taken from the assassins. Yes, That is because this is not the trial anymore. It is a calculated dissolution with an audience of one. Xylos's voice carried down into the chamber, smooth as oil. You have done well to make it this far, human, but skill in the dark does not make you invincible. This ends now, before the Grand Conclave leader makes the mistake of thinking you are more than you are. Lena called back, her voice firm. That confidence in your pets is truly charming. Let us see if they are better than the ones we have already vanquished. Xylos's smile did not waver. He gave a flick of his conceptual fingers, and the mental creatures launched forward. Jax raised the psionic firearm and focused his will, sending a burst of pure blue-white mental energy. The recoil was sharper than expected. The lead beast veered at the last second, the psionic shot scorching a line across its conceptual flank, but not slowing it. Lena sidestepped another, slashing with her own mental blade, the serrated edge catching in the creature's conceptual forearm, ripping a long tear in its manifested psychic muscle. It howled, the sound rattling the chamber's mental walls. Jax dropped the psionic firearm. It would not be quick enough. He met his attacker head-on, ducking low as it lunged, driving his mental blade into the softer conceptual flesh just behind the jaw hinge. The impact jarred his arm, but he shoved upward, feeling the resistance give way. The beast convulsed, then collapsed in a heap of dissipating thought. Lena was backing up fast, her beast circling for another strike. The third had veered wide, looking for an opening to come at them from behind. Left, Jax barked, and Lena pivoted just in time to avoid the snap of those mental teeth. Jax snatched up the fallen psionic firearm again and fired point-blank into the side of the beast Lena had wounded. The energy blast blew through its conceptual ribs in a flash of scorched mental chitin and steaming, disintegrating thought. The third beast hesitated for half a heartbeat at the sight, then lunged straight at Jax. He let it come, stepping into the charge instead of back. His mental shoulder slammed into its conceptual chest, his knife hand driving upward under the chin. The serrated mental blade punched through the roof of its mental mouth, and it went limp instantly. The chamber went silent, except for the faint hiss of burning psychic energy. Jax kicked the last conceptual carcass aside and looked up at Xylos. "That the best you have?" Xylos's smile thinned. "You misunderstand. That was merely the warm-up." He gestured, and his two mental guards stepped down from the platform. Up close, they were even bigger than they had looked, each easily 4 meters tall, with armor that shifted and flexed as if part of their very consciousness. Their conceptual hands ended not in fingers, but in hooked mental claws. Lena muttered, "Of course, they are not just watching." Jax tossed her the alien psionic firearm. "Make it count." The mental guards came fast for their size, moving with the smooth precision of trained psychic killers. Jax met the first head-on, their mental blades clashing in a screech of pure will. The guard's strength was monstrous, shoving Jax back a full step. Lena opened fire on the second, the blue-white bursts punching holes in the conceptual armor but not dissolving it. The thing kept coming, swiping at Lena's head with a clawed backhand. Lena ducked, rolled, and fired again into the exposed conceptual joint at the armpit. This time, the guard snarled, a purely mental sound of rage, and staggered. Jax ducked under a sweeping hook from his opponent, slashing for the knee. Sparks flew as the serrated mental edge bit into the armor plating, not deep enough to sever, but enough to make the guard snarl. The counterstrike came fast, a knee to Jax's conceptual gut that knocked the wind out of him. He stumbled but did not fall, twisting with the momentum to bring his mental blade across the guard's throat. The conceptual metal screeched in protest before finally giving way. A gush of dark, psychic fluid sprayed and the guard collapsed, twitching. Lena had driven her opponent back against the mental wall now, firing into the same damaged joint again and again until the armor split. The last shot took the guard's conceptual head halfway off, and it slumped to the floor, dissipating into nothingness. Xylos's expression was different now. Not fear exactly, but the first hint of realizing his plan was not as neat as he thought. Jax took a step toward the platform. You sent assassins into the trial. You sent your mental constructs. You sent your guards. You are still breathing, because I am letting you. Xylos's voice was cold. You will not touch me. The moment you do, every guard in the court will bring about your downfall. Jax's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. Then perhaps you should hope I keep letting you talk. From behind them, the sound of heavy doors opening filled the physical chamber. A new set of footsteps entered, not the synchronized march of soldiers, but something slower, heavier. The Grand Conclave leader stepped through, flanked by 6 of its own elite Varlian guards. Its helmeted gaze swept over the dissipating mental forms, then landed on Xylos. I was told the trial of silent contemplation was proceeding as tradition demands, the Grand Conclave leader said, its layered voice low but carrying. This is not tradition. Xylos bowed its head slightly. Majesty, the humans are dangerous. I sought only to ensure the trial was worthy of them. You sought to bring about their demise before I could make my own judgment. The Grand Conclave leader cut in. You turned my trial into your pit of dissolution. Xylos's jaw tightened, but it did not deny it. The Grand Conclave leader stepped closer to the platform. You forget your place, High Prelate Xylos. You serve at my will, not your own ambition. Its gaze slid to Jax and Lena, and you forget what the proving ground has already shown. These humans will not break as easily as you think. Lena muttered under her breath. I am starting to like this one. Jax did not answer. He knew better than to assume the Grand Conclave leader's favor meant safety. The Grand Conclave leader turned to them. You have survived the proving ground. You have survived the trial of silent contemplation, even twisted as it was. You have defeated creatures bred for mental war and constructs trained to end thoughts. That is useful. Jax's voice was steady. You planning to use us then? The Grand Conclave leader's helmet gleamed faintly. In the ascendancy, everything of value is used. Xylos's voice cut in sharply. Majesty, they are still intruders. Enough, the Grand Conclave leader said without looking at him. They will be given quarters in the upper decks and access to the Ascendancy's armory, and they will serve me until I decide otherwise. Lena blinked. Serve you how? The Grand Conclave leader's multi-layered gaze lingered on her for a moment before answering. There is a conflict brewing at the Ascendancy's borders. You will go where I send you. Fight who I tell you to fight, and in return, you will continue to exist. Jax studied him, and if we say no, the Grand Conclave leader's smile was thin. Then you will perish slowly. The walk back to the upper decks was quiet, save for the soft hum of the lifts and the occasional creak of the station's superstructure. The new quarters were far from the storage bay they had been dumped in before. Private rooms, clean air, even a small viewport looking out into the stars. Lena dropped into one of the chairs. So, we are now assets for an alien empire. Jack stood by the viewport, watching the slow drift of ships outside. We are survivors right now. That means working for them. Lena frowned, and later, Jax's eyes stayed on the stars. Later, we figure out who is truly in charge in this empire, and if it is not the current ruler, or if it should not be the current ruler, we deal with that when we get there. Lena gave a short, humorless laugh. Guess we have seen worse. Jax finally turned from the viewport, the faintest edge of a smile on his face. Yes, we have. The summons came at the break of the station's artificial dawn cycle. The lights in the quarters brightened slowly, simulating sunrise, though Jax could feel in his bones it was all theater. Metal walls did not care about dawn. The door hissed open without a knock. A tall figure in black armor stepped inside, carrying a tablet-like device. Its face was hidden behind a smooth mask with only a vertical slit for the eyes. Orders, it said in a voice that sounded half Varlian, half processed through machinery. You depart within the hour. Lena was still half asleep, sitting up on the bunk. Depart where? The figure held out the device. The Grand Conclave leader's words are recorded. You will view them privately. Your escort will meet you at docking arms 17. It turned and left without another word. The recording activated with a simple touch. The Grand Conclave leader's helmeted form filled the screen. Humans, its voice began low and deliberate. The Ascendancy has a frontier world named Kalen Verge. It is a strip of stone and dust with little value, except that it sits on the crossing point of 3 warp routes. Whoever controls Kalen controls the border. My enemies know this. They have taken a mining colony there as a foothold. You will take it back for me. Jax exchanged a glance with Lena. You will have a ship, the Grand Conclave leader continued, and a small strike team from my guard. But make no mistake, this is not a mission for them. They will follow you or they will perish. The enemy is not a beast, but a rival faction. They call themselves the Xyler Hegemony. They will not expect you. Use that. The recording ended with the faintest curve of its lips. They did not waste time packing. There was not much to pack. The escort turned out to be 4 Ascendancy soldiers in dark gray armor, faces hidden behind insectoid helmets. Each carried a rifle-like weapon that looked more suited for vaporizing walls than eliminating individuals. Their transport was a sleek, narrow craft docked in the shadow of the fortress's bulk. The hull was painted in a deep matte black that seemed to swallow the station's light. Lena whistled. That is a stealth ship, if I have ever seen one. One of the Ascendancy soldiers turned its head slightly. It is not stealth. It is an instrument of downfall that does not announce itself. Cute slogan, Lena muttered. The jump to Kalen Verge was short. The ship's viewport went from the swirl of hyperspace to a barren expanse of rock and sand. In the distance, jagged mountains rose like the spines of a buried beast. The mining colony sat in the shadow of one of those ridges. From orbit, Jax could see the grid of structures, prefab shelters, processing plants, and the tall, skeletal towers of drilling rigs. Smoke drifted from several points in the colony, but no Ascendancy flags flew. The pilot's voice came through the comm. Enemy patrols detected on the north and west perimeters. Recommend entry through the south ridge. Jax nodded. Take us down low and slow. I want us under their sensors before we get close. Lena strapped in beside him. You got a plan for once we are down there? Yes, Jax said. Make them think we are not worth shooting at, then make them regret it. They set down in a rocky gulch, less than a kilometer from the colony's southern edge. The air was thin but breathable, carrying the sharp tang of ozone from the drilling equipment. The Ascendancy soldiers moved with crisp precision, but Jax could see it in their posture. They were not used to taking orders from outsiders. That was fine. He did not need them to like it, just to follow it. Rule 1, Jax said quietly as they moved toward the colony. We move fast, we hit harder, and we do not get cute with drawn-out firefights. In and out before they can call in reinforcements. Lena added, Rule 2. If something moves and it is not us, assume it is hostile until it proves otherwise. They reached the colony's outer fence, a crude barrier of electrified mesh and metal poles. It had been patched in places with whatever scrap the Xyler had on hand. Jax crouched low, studying the 2 guards at the nearest gate. Their armor was light, their weapons older models, and their body language screamed boredom. 2-person patrol, Lena murmured. We could eliminate them before they know what hit them. Not yet, Jax said. We are ghosts until we are not. They circled wide, finding a spot where the fence sagged and the power lines had been cut. Slipping through was easy. Inside the colony, the streets between the prefab structures were eerily quiet. A few civilians, miners by the look of them, moved quickly from building to building, heads down. No one met their eyes. The first Xyler patrol came around a corner without warning. 4 soldiers in mismatched armor carrying rifles slung over their shoulders. Jax did not hesitate. He closed the distance in a dead sprint, slamming his blade into the throat of the lead soldier before the man even registered movement. Lena defeated the second with a sharp twist of his neck, the crack echoing off the prefab walls. The Ascendancy soldiers handled the last 2 with clinical efficiency, their energy weapons punching neat holes through armor and flesh alike. Jax dragged the bodies into a side alley. "Strip the armor," he said. Lena raised an eyebrow. "You want us playing dress-up?" "I want us walking through their checkpoints without getting illuminated. That means looking like them." The stolen armor was a poor fit, but passable at a distance. The helmets filtered the air and distorted their voices just enough to hide the fact they were not Xylar. They moved deeper into the colony, past more patrols and into the heart of the mining complex. The drilling rigs loomed overhead, their skeletal frames groaning in the wind. The main processing plant was a squat, windowless block of metal with 2 guarded entrances. Jax stopped in the shadow of a rig. "That is the hub. Take it out and they lose their reason to be here." Lena frowned. "And probably half the colony's life support with it." Jax's tone was flat. "They will live. The Xylar will not." They approached the plant in 2 teams, Jax and Lena on one side, the Ascendancy soldiers on the other. Jax gave the signal and they hit both entrances at once. The first 2 guards went down in silence, throats cut before they could shout. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of hot metal and chemicals. Pipes and conveyor systems rattled overhead, carrying raw ore deeper into the facility. A Xylar squad rounded a corner ahead. Jax dropped one with a blade to the gut, yanking the man forward to use as a shield. As the others fired, energy bolts hissed past, scorching the walls. Lena took another down with a clean shot to the head. The Ascendancy soldiers swept in from the opposite side, cutting the remaining Xylar to pieces in seconds. At the plant's control center, Jax scanned the panels. Most of it was alien tech, but the basics were not that different from human mining systems. He found the main power feed and yanked 2 thick cables free. Sparks spat across the floor, and the deep thrum of the machinery began to die. Alarms wailed instantly. Lena grinned behind her helmet. "Guess we are not ghosts anymore." Jax's voice was cold. "Good, let them come." They fought their way back toward the South Ridge, leaving chaos in their wake. Xylar soldiers poured into the streets, confused and shouting over the alarm sirens. Civilians scattered, doors slamming shut. The Ascendancy soldiers were efficient, but it was Jax and Lena who broke the Xylar's nerve. They moved like predators in a herd, hitting hard, never staying in one place long enough to get pinned. By the time they reached the outer fence again, the colony was in full retreat. The Xylar were not chasing. They were scrambling to regroup. Back aboard the ship, the Ascendancy pilot did not speak until they had cleared the atmosphere. "Report to the Grand Conclave leader will be immediate." Lena leaned back in her seat, peeling off the stolen helmet. "I think we just made his point for him." Jax did not answer right away. He was staring at the viewport, at the shrinking shape of Kalen Verge below. Something about itched at him, how quickly the Xylar had broken. How lightly they had guarded the plant. It had not been a stronghold, it had been bait. Jax could not shake the itch. The colony had not been defended like a border jewel, it had been manned like an afterthought. The Xylar soldiers were mismatched, their patrol routes lazy, their reaction time slow. Even the plant's security grid had been a joke compared to what the Grand Conclave leader's briefing implied. Lena noticed, too. She leaned over from the next seat on the shuttle as the barren curve of Kalen Verge shrank behind them. "Not exactly the nightmare they sold us," she said. "I have seen drunk dock gangs guard liquor shipments tighter than that." Jax did not respond. He watched the tactical readout in the corner of the viewport, a slow spinning wireframe of the planet with heat signatures marking the scattered Xylar units they had bypassed. None of them were moving to retake the plant. Instead, they were leaving. "Lena," Jax said quietly, "those patrols we avoided. They are heading west, not toward the colony, away from it." Lena frowned. "Retreat." "Not retreat," Jax said. "Redeployment." The pilot's voice crackled over the comm, inbound transmission from the fortress. "The Grand Conclave leader will receive your report now." Jax did not look away from the readout. "Patch it." The viewport flickered, replaced by the Grand Conclave leader's helmeted form and the smooth, deliberate voice that carried even through static. "Report, human." Jax did not sugarcoat it. Kalen Verge is secure. The Xylar forces broke faster than expected. Almost too fast. The Grand Conclave leader tilted its helmet slightly. Too fast? They were not dug in. They were sitting on the colony like they knew it did not matter. Either they wanted us to take it, or they did not care if we did. For a fraction of a second, the Grand Conclave leader's expression did not change. Then, almost imperceptibly, its helmet narrowed. "Return at once." The transmission cut without ceremony. Lena stared at Jax. "You think he knew?" Jax leaned back, jaw tightening. "If he did not before, he does now." The return trip should have been quiet. Should have been. Halfway through the jump corridor, alarms began to scream in the cockpit. The Ascendancy pilot's fingers danced across the console, chittering curses in its native tongue. "What is it?" Jax called. The pilot's voice was clipped. "Interdiction field. The jump corridor is collapsing ahead of us." Lena cursed. "Meaning?" Jax said grimly. "Someone is about to pull us out of hyperspace in the middle of nowhere." The transition hit like a brick wall. One moment the stars were stretched into streaks. The next they snapped into pinpoints against a backdrop of cold black. The ship shuddered violently as the systems reoriented. And then they saw it. A fleet, no, a swarm of Xylar ships hung in space ahead. Their hulls bristling with angular armor plates and weapons pods that looked like spines. They were not warships in the Ascendancy sense, sleek and heavily shielded. They were built for speed and swarming numbers. Lena whistled low. "That is a lot more than the Grand Conclave leader said we would see out here." They were not defending Kalen, Jax said flatly. They were waiting for whoever came to take it. The pilot began evasive maneuvers immediately, rolling the shuttle hard to port. The first volley from the Xylar lit up space where they had just been. Energy bolts and kinetic slugs scattering like a meteor shower. The Ascendancy soldiers strapped into firing positions along the shuttle's hull ports, their weapons flashing in rapid pulses. The Xylar ships moved like predators, circling fast and darting into fire before peeling away. Jax moved to the nearest weapons station, scanning the tactical overlay. "They are hurting us, cutting off the jump vector back to the fortress." Lena slid into the station beside him. "So, what is the move?" Jax's jaw tightened. "We do not run. We punch through before they close the noose." The Xylar were not expecting a countercharge. Jax had the pilot vector straight for the densest cluster of enemy ships, weaving just enough to throw off their aim. The Ascendancy soldiers poured fire into anything that crossed their path, tearing holes in smaller craft and forcing larger ones to peel away. Lena grinned savagely as one Xylar ship spun out of control and detonated against a drifting fragment of rock. "That is one." "Do not count," Jax said. "Just keep shooting." They broke through the first line of ships, but the swarm was not breaking. They were regrouping, forming a wedge ahead to cut off the escape vector entirely. Jax's eyes flicked to the nav display. Off to port, barely a sliver on the readout, was a dense asteroid belt. "Change course now." The pilot hesitated. "Asteroid field is unstable." Navigation was not a suggestion. Jax snapped. The ship dove into the field and chaos followed. Massive chunks of rock tumbled through space, some big enough to blot out the stars, others spinning in tight clusters. The Xylar chased them in, but their numbers worked against them. Ships collided with rock, slammed into each other, or were ripped apart by sudden debris showers. Lena laughed over the comms. They are consuming themselves alive. "Do not celebrate yet," Jack said. "We are not out." He had the pilot thread them deeper into the belt, weaving through gaps barely wider than the ship's wings. The Xylar pursuit thinned with each maneuver until only a handful of ships remained. When they finally broke out the far side, the stars opened up ahead of them, and there was nothing blocking their jump vector. They did not jump straight back to the fortress. Jax had the pilot angled toward a cold, uninhabited moon on the edge of the corridor. They set down in a crater, shields up, engines idling low. Lena stepped off the ramp into the powdery dust, looking at Jax. "Why the pit stop?" "Because," Jax said, scanning the horizon, "if we go straight back now, we take whoever is tracking us right to the Grand Conclave leader's front door. And if he is half as paranoid as I think, he will take that as a reason to put a knife in our backs before they can." Lena exhaled slowly. "So, we wait." Jax nodded. "We wait, and we figure out why the Xylar wanted us intact long enough to spring that trap. They did not have to wait long." An hour later, one of the Ascendancy soldiers called them to the comm station. A transmission was coming through. Not on Ascendancy channels, but an open-band low-power signal. Jax had it patched through. The screen flickered, and the face that appeared was not Varlian, not human. The alien's skin was the deep green of tarnished copper, its eyes narrow and dark. Its voice was low, measured, almost amused. "Humans, you fought well on Kalen. Better than the Grand Conclave leader's other assets." Lena's tone was ice. "You with the Xylar?" "I am their commander," the alien said without hesitation. "And I know the Grand Conclave leader sent you there to perish. I also know you are not his loyal tools." Jax did not move, did not blink. "What do you want?" The alien smiled faintly. "To make you an offer. The Ascendancy thinks humans are just another tool. I think you are a weapon. Work with me and you will not be disposable pawns, you will be allies." Lena glanced at Jax. "He is offering us a job." Jax kept his eyes on the screen. "And the catch?" "You defeat for the Ascendancy, you get nothing but survival. Defeat for me, and I will give you something the Grand Conclave leader never will. Freedom." The transmission cut before Jax could answer. Back on the ramp, Lena crossed her arms. "So what now? Take the offer." Jax stared out at the horizon of the dead moon. "We take the intel. The Xylar think we are good enough to recruit. The Grand Conclave leader thinks we are good enough to send into a grinder. That means we are worth more than either side is willing to admit." Lena grinned faintly. "Which means we play both until one makes the mistake of trusting us?" Jax's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. "Exactly." When they finally jumped back toward Ascendancy space, the path was clear. The Grand Conclave leader's fortress loomed ahead, its spires catching the light of the nearby sun. Jax knew the questions would start the moment they docked. He also knew the answers he would give would be carefully chosen. Just enough truth to keep the Grand Conclave leader's interest, and just enough omission to keep the Xylar's offer alive. For the first time since stepping into this galaxy, they were not just reacting. They had options, and that made them dangerous. Do you want to witness these harshworlders turn an entire galaxy upside down? Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And tell me in the comments below, what is the craziest thing humanity could survive? Docking back at the Grand Conclave leader's fortress felt like walking into the lion's mouth. The docking arm sealed with a hiss, and before the ramp had even lowered, a full squad of the Ascendancy's elite guards stood waiting. Their armor gleamed black, accented with thin red lines that pulsed faintly like veins. The insectoid helmets turned in perfect unison to follow Jax and Lena as they stepped down. No one spoke. The guards formed up around them and led the way through the fortress's cold, echoing corridors. Lena leaned just close enough for Jax to hear. "We are either getting medals or dissolution." Jax did not answer. He could feel the tension in the air, the kind that came before a trigger was pulled. They were brought to the tribunal chamber directly, bypassing the waiting chambers. The massive black doors swung open, and the Grand Conclave leader was already standing at the foot of its throne, its helmeted gaze fixed on them. "You return later than expected." Jax's tone was even. "We ran into resistance." "I am aware." The Grand Conclave leader's gaze sharpened like a predator catching the scent of blood. "A fleet-sized resistance in an asteroid field that was not on your assigned route." Lena opened her mouth, but Jax cut her off with a half-truth. "The Xyler pulled us out of jump ambush. We punched through, used the belt for cover." The Grand Conclave leader's fingers tapped once on its crystalline armrest. "And yet you survived." Jax let a faint edge into his voice. "You sent us out there with a handful of guards and a gunship that was not built for fleet work. Surviving was not the surprise." The Grand Conclave leader's gaze lingered on him for a moment too long. Then it spoke. "Kalen Verge remains under ascendancy control. For now, that is acceptable. You will rest. Your next orders will come soon." They were dismissed without ceremony, which told Jax more than words could. Their new quarters were higher in the fortress, still small but with a view of the void. Lena shut the door behind them and exhaled. He knows something is off. Jax dropped into the chair by the viewport. It does not matter if he knows. It matters if he can prove it. Lena frowned. "You think the Xyler commander is going to contact us again?" "He will," Jax said. "And when he does, we listen. It does not mean we do what he wants, but we make sure we are not just pawns in the Grand Conclave leader's game." 3 days later, the Grand Conclave leader's orders came. An ascendancy courier brought a sealed case and a data pad. The case contained updated weapons, a pair of compact, high-output energy rifles and combat knives with alloyed edges that shimmered faintly in the light. The data pad held the mission brief: infiltration and sabotage of a relay station deep in Xyler space. The station's function was clear. It handled encrypted communications between Xyler fleets. Destroy it and their coordination would take a hit. Lena looked up from the data pad. "Sounds straightforward." Jax scanned the specs. "Straightforward missions are the ones that bring about your downfall. If I were them, I would have that station rigged to trap anyone who tries to take it." Lena smirked. "Guess we will find out." They left the fortress on a courier frigate, faster and sleeker than their last ride, with no guards this time. Just them, 2 pilots and the mission. The jump into Xyler space was smooth, but Jax's gut was already telling him they were not alone. He spent the entire trip watching the sensors, noting the faint blips that came and went too regularly to be natural. Halfway to the relay station, the comm panel lit up, not with an ascendancy code, but an open-band low-power signal. Jax answered without hesitation. The Xyler commander's green, tarnished copper face appeared, the faintest smile on his lips. "I knew you would come," he said, "and I knew it would be for something important." Lena crossed her arms. "You are tracking us now." The Xyler ignored her, eyes on Jax. "That station you are going to destroy, it is not just communications. It is where we keep the evidence that the Ascendancy has been violating the old treaties. Evidence that could turn half their allies into enemies overnight." Jax did not flinch. "You want us to steal it instead of blowing it up?" "Exactly," the Xyler commander said. "Get me the files and I will make sure you are no longer disposable to anyone." Lena gave a humorless laugh. "And if we just blow it like we were told, then the Ascendancy's lies remain hidden and you remain tools." The signal cut without waiting for an answer. Lena turned to Jax. "We cannot play both sides forever. Eventually, one is going to figure out we are lying to them." Jax looked out the viewport at the streak of stars. "That is the point. We make sure they both think we are more useful alive than ended, even if they know we are lying." Lena shook her head. "You are going to get us eliminated." Jax's voice was calm maybe, but not today. The relay station hung in space like a spined sea creature, its long antenna arrays stretching out in every direction. It rotated slowly, the metallic surface catching faint glints from a nearby star. The frigate's stealth systems got them close enough to dock on an unmonitored maintenance port. Inside, the station's corridors were narrow, with panels that hummed faintly from the power running through them. Xyler technicians moved about, unarmed, though the occasional guard in light armor patrolled the halls. Jax led the way to the data core, bypassing the main access points and instead following the maintenance ducts. Lena grunted as she crawled through the cramped space. "You are sure this leads to the core?" "I am sure this leads somewhere the guards will not expect us," Jax replied. The data core was a cylindrical chamber, 3 decks high, filled with glowing columns of vertical storage units. A single Xyler officer worked at the main terminal. Jax signaled to Lena. One quick strike, and the officer went down without a sound. Lena moved to the terminal. "I can get the files, but I need time." Jax took up a position by the door. "You have 5 minutes. The Ascendancy's orders had been clear. Overload the core, detonate the station." The Xyler's orders were equally clear. Extract the files. Doing both would require precision. Lena's fingers flew over the terminal's alien interface. Got the evidence. Ascendancy ship manifests in restricted zones. Intel logs from before the treaty expired. Enough to make the Grand Conclave leader's head spin. Jax planted a charge on the far side of the core. "Now wipe the rest." Lena triggered a purge program. The glowing columns began dimming one by one as the data burned out. The first alarm sounded just as they left the core. Xyler guards rounded the corner ahead, rifles up. Jax eliminated the first with a burst from his energy rifle, Lena vanquishing the second before he could fire. They moved fast, ducking into maintenance shafts when the main corridors got too hot. The station's rotation disoriented most people, but Jax navigated without hesitation, cutting through angles that brought them back to the docking port ahead of the Xyler's response teams. By the time they launched, the first secondary explosions were blooming behind them, the core charges doing their work. Lena exhaled hard in the cockpit. "So now we have the Ascendancy thinking we blew the place like good little soldiers, and the Xyler thinking we handed them their golden ticket." Jax's voice was cold. "Exactly where I want us." The Grand Conclave leader was waiting when they returned, not in the tribunal chamber, but in a private War Council chamber. Maps of contested space floated as holograms in the air, dotted with Ascendancy and Xyler fleet positions. He studied them as he spoke. "The relay station is gone." "You have done well." Jax inclined his head slightly. "We keep our end of the deal." The Grand Conclave leader's eyes flicked to him. "And yet, I sense you have kept something for yourself." Lena tensed, but Jax did not blink. "I keep breathing. That is what I keep." The Grand Conclave leader smiled faintly, a predator amused by prey that bares its teeth. "Good. You will need that skill. The next mission will be delicate." In the days that followed, Jax and Lena began building something the Ascendancy did not see coming. A network not of spies or soldiers, but of people caught between both powers. Smugglers, miners, disgraced Ascendancy officers, Xyler defectors, anyone with a grudge and a willingness to trade information for favors. Every mission for the Grand Conclave leader became 2 missions, one official, one unofficial. Every contact the Xyler gave them became another point in the web. It was dangerous work, but for the first time since stepping into this galaxy, they were not just pieces on the board. They were starting to move the pieces themselves. The first sign the game was collapsing came as a whisper in a back corridor. A smuggler contact, one of the few Ascendancy citizens willing to deal in Xyler goods, met Jax in a maintenance bay below the fortress docks. He was pale, sweating, and looked like a man who had just been told the executioner was sharpening the axe. "They know," the smuggler said. "Both sides, not the details, but enough. The Grand Conclave leader is pulling ships from the border. The Xylar are consolidating in their core worlds. Everyone is preparing for something. Lena leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. Yes, and guess who is going to be standing in the middle when it kicks off? Jax did not respond immediately. His mind was already running scenarios, half of them ending with an energy bolt in his back from one side or the other. The smuggler's voice cracked. You did not hear this from me, but the Grand Conclave leader has ordered your next mission to be non-return. And the Xylar, they have put a bounty on your heads big enough to buy a small moon. Lena gave a humorless laugh. Guess we made an impression. They met in their quarters that night. Jax had cleared the room of listening devices twice already, but he still kept his voice low. We are done playing middlemen, he said. Lena frowned. You mean pick a side? Jax shook his head. I mean be the side. The Ascendancy wants control. The Xylar want chaos. We give them both, but on our terms. We pull their fleets into the same system and let them tear each other apart. Lena's grin was slow and sharp. And while they are bleeding each other dry, we take the leverage, Jax finished. Ships, stations, people, enough to make them deal with us like equals or not at all. The plan took shape fast. The Xylar wanted proof of the Ascendancy's treaty violations. They already had it from the relay station. The Grand Conclave leader wanted Xylar logistics. They knew exactly where the key supply depots were from their network of smugglers and defectors. All they had to do was feed each side just enough intel to make the other commit their main fleets to a decisive engagement and choose the system. They picked Vorith's Gap, a dead sector between Ascendancy and Xylar space littered with debris fields from wars centuries past. The wreckage was dense enough to hide an entire armada until it was in firing range. Through coded channels, Lena accidentally leaked a location of a Xylar supply convoy to the Ascendancy's strategists. Through a separate line, Jax sold the Xylar commander the timetable for an Ascendancy fleet movement near the same coordinates. Both sides bit hard. 2 weeks later, Vorith's Gap lit up like the birth of a star. Jax and Lena watched from the bridge of a commandeered Xylar courier ship, floating in the shadow of a derelict battleship that had been adrift since, before humanity ever touched the stars. The Ascendancy fleet came in sleek and disciplined, wedge formations moving as one. The Xylar swarmed in ragged packs, darting in and out of the debris like wolves. When the first volley hit, the whole sector shuddered with the exchange. Lena's eyes were locked on the tactical display. This is going to get ugly fast. That is the point, Jax said. They were not just watching. The moment the fleets were fully engaged, their network came alive. Smuggler ships and defected patrol craft emerged from the debris fields, hitting both sides' supply haulers, crippling comm relays, and hijacking damaged vessels. In the chaos, neither side could tell friend from foe. Every contact outside the main fleet was just another blip to eliminate. Lena's voice was tight with focus. We have 3 Ascendancy corvettes breaking off from the fight. Damaged but still moving. You want them? Jax did not hesitate. Take the lead, board and strip them. By the 4th hour of the battle, Vorith's Gap was a graveyard. Dozens of ships drifted in ruin, their hulls glowing from internal fires. The Ascendancy's tight formations had fractured. Xylar packs scattering under heavy losses. Jax had no illusions. Either side could rally if given the chance. That is why they were not going to get one. He triggered a coded signal to the rest of their network. Small strike craft, hidden until now, surged from the wreckage to target the flagships of both fleets simultaneously. Not to destroy, just to wound enough to force a retreat. Lena grinned as the tactical display lit up with new explosions. Both sides just lost command control. Exactly, Jax said. Now we move. They emerged from the debris in their courier ship, broadcasting on open channels to both fleets. Jax's voice was calm, measured, carrying the weight of someone who had already proven he could survive their worst. Ascendancy, Xyler, you have both been played by us. You can keep bleeding each other until there is nothing left, or you can deal with us and walk away with something to rebuild with. Your choice. Lena cut the channel. You think they will take that? Jax's mouth twitched. It does not matter. They will take it. The fighting sputtered to a halt over the next hour. Not because either side trusted them, but because neither could afford to keep losing ships. The Grand Conclave leader's helmeted gaze appeared on the comm first. You presume much, human. Only what I have earned, Jax said. You came here for the Xyler. I did that. The rest is whether you can accept that your best move now is listening instead of vanquishing. Minutes later, the Xyler commander's green, weathered face appeared on a split channel. Clever, Risky. You have made enemies today. Jax did not blink. And clients, do not forget that part. The negotiations were not peace. Not really. More like an armed ceasefire with both sides too busy counting the ships they had left to one another round. The deal was simple. Both the Ascendancy and Xyler would leave Vorith's Gap to neutral administration. That administration was Jax and Lena, backed by their growing fleet of stolen, salvaged, and defected ships. The Grand Conclave leader did not like it. The Xyler did not like it, but both liked the alternative less. Weeks later, Jax stood on the bridge of their new flagship, a refitted Ascendancy destroyer bristling with Xyler weapon systems. The viewport showed the tangled wreckage of Vorith's Gap slowly being cleared by crews loyal to no flag but theirs. Lena came up beside him, a data pad in hand. We have 5 new ships pledging to the network this week. 2 Ascendancy deserters, 1 Xyler captain, and a pair of independent haulers looking for protection. Jax nodded. Keep them spread across the outer lanes. No clusters big enough to make either side nervous. Lena smirked. You ever think we would end up running our own slice of the galaxy? Jax's gaze stayed on the stars. I did not think we would live this long. Lena chuckled. Guess we have seen worse. Jax finally allowed himself a small, humorless smile. Yes. The summons came, as always, at the artificial dawn, not from a faceless guard but directly from their network. A scrambled, urgent message. Ascendancy forces detected massing at the edge of Vorith's Gap. Not a patrol. A full fleet. And the Xyler, Lena asked. The network contact's voice was strained. They have just received word. Their commander, the one who contacted you, is inbound, but not with a fleet. He is coming alone. To discover how these harshworlders will navigate being caught between 2 galactic powers, ensure you subscribe and hit the like button. And tell me, what's one human trait you believe aliens would find utterly baffling? The summons came, as always, at the artificial dawn, not from a faceless guard but directly from their network. A scrambled, urgent message. Ascendancy forces detected massing at the edge of Vorith's Gap. Not a patrol. A full fleet. And the Xyler, Lena asked. The network contact's voice was strained. They have just received word. Their commander, the one who contacted you, is inbound, but not with a fleet. He is coming alone. Jax stood on the bridge of their commandeered Xyler courier, the tactical display a shimmering map of impending conflict. The Ascendancy fleet, a formidable wedge of cruisers and destroyers, glowed bright red on the sensor grid, its approach precise, relentless. On the opposite vector, a single, small green blip indicated the Xyler commander's vessel, a personal frigate, moving with a desperate haste. He is running, Lena observed, her voice low. Running from his own people or from the Ascendancy's wrath, or both. Or running to us, Jax countered, his eyes fixed on the rapidly converging icons. He chose to come alone. That tells me he has a card to play, and he thinks we are the only ones who will listen. The flagship of the Ascendancy fleet, a colossal battle platform, was the first to arrive at the edge of the gap, its massive hull eclipsing distant stars. Its comms blared on an open channel, a layered voice booming across the void. Human units, you are in violation of Ascendancy mandates. Surrender the Xylar operative and yourselves. This is your only warning." Lena snorted. "Subtle." Before Jax could respond, the Xylar commander's frigate burst from hyperspace on the opposite side of the debris field, a solitary point of light against the vast darkness. It streamed directly toward their position. "He is making a beeline," Lena noted, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "What is his play?" "My play," Jax said, his voice calm, decisive. "Open a three-way channel. Ascendancy Fleet Command, Xylar Commander, and us. Encrypt our side." The comms officer, a former Ascendancy defector with sharp, anxious eyes, rapidly complied. The main viewscreen split. On one side, the helmeted form of the Grand Conclave leader, radiating stern authority. On the other, the green, weathered face of the Xylar commander, his expression a mix of exhaustion and desperation. In the center, Jax and Lena, their faces betraying nothing. "Grand Conclave leader," Jax began, his voice clear, amplified across the void. "Xylar commander, welcome. We believe there has been a misunderstanding." The Grand Conclave leader's voice crackled. "There is no misunderstanding, human. You harbor a known enemy of the Ascendancy, and you have defied my direct orders." "A known enemy," Jax raised an eyebrow, "or a manipulated pawn?" He turned his gaze to the Xylar commander. "Commander, you said you had evidence of Ascendancy treaty violations. You were correct, but that was not the full truth, was it?" The Xylar commander's eyes widened, a spark of understanding or perhaps fear in them. He looked from Jax to the Grand Conclave leader, then back again. "What are you speaking of, human?" The Grand Conclave leader demanded, its layered voice thrumming with impatience. "The data from the relay station was incomplete," Jax continued, ignoring the interruption. "It showed the Ascendancy violating old treaties, but it also contained something else. Something you, Commander, may have overlooked or were encouraged to overlook." Jax's eyes flicked to the Grand Conclave leader. "And something your High Prelate Xylos desperately did not want anyone to find." Lena brought up a holographic projection on their end, patching it through to both screens. It was a fragmented data file, showing a series of encrypted communications. "This," Lena stated, her voice calm and analytical, "is a log of communications between High Prelate Xylos and a highly placed but anonymous Xylar operative, dating back years, before the treaty was even in place." The Xylar commander's face was a mask of disbelief. "Impossible! I was assured our intelligence was uncompromised." "It was compromised by your own ambition, Commander," Jax shot back. "And by Xylos's hunger for power. He wasn't just testing us. He was setting a trap for both your forces, attempting to provoke a full-scale war, a war that would weaken both your empires, leaving him poised to seize power within the Ascendancy." The Grand Conclave leader's helmet remained still, but the air around it seemed to shimmer with sudden, intense fury. "You accuse a High Prelate of treason?" "The evidence speaks for itself," Lena interjected, pointing to a section of the holographic data. "These are Xylos's direct orders to the Xylar operative, a rogue general within your own hegemony, Commander, instructing them to stage the Kalen Verge occupation. Not as a strategic move for the Xylar, but as bait. Bait to draw your forces into a protracted conflict with the Ascendancy, while Xylos, acting from within, systematically dismantled the Grand Conclave leader's logistical and intelligence networks, rendering your own defenses vulnerable." The Xylar commander's face contorted in a snarl. "A rogue general? My own forces were used against me?" "And you, Grand Conclave leader," Jax pressed, turning his full attention to the Varlian ruler. "While Xylos was feeding the Xylar this manipulated intelligence, he was also deliberately underreporting Xylar capabilities and overstating your own vulnerabilities to your war council. He has been systematically eroding your strategic advantage, making you believe your empire was weaker than it is, and your enemies stronger, all to justify a desperate, devastating war that would leave him as the sole, strong hand to guide a crippled ascendancy. The Grand Conclave leader's helmet tilted. These are grave accusations, human, unsupported by your fragmented data. Oh, it gets better, Lena chimed in, bringing up another projection. This one was a financial ledger. While both your empires bled, Xylos was establishing a series of shell corporations, siphoning resources from both sides through black markets, preparing to fund his own power grab, using the chaos of your war as cover. The Xyler commander slammed a fist on his console, a clear sound of fury. I was a fool, used by a worm. The Grand Conclave leader was silent for a long moment, its multi-layered voice absent. Then, slowly, it spoke, a cold, hard resonance that filled the channel. Return to the fortress, human, and bring all of your data. The prelate will answer for this. Not yet, Jax stated, his gaze unyielding. The prelate has allies, deep within your own ranks, Grand Conclave leader, and the rogue general commander still commands significant loyalties within your hegemony. If you both return now, weakened and exposed, Xylos and his co-conspirators will merely complete their work, and then turn their full might on the victor. What do you propose then? The Grand Conclave leader asked, a hint of grudging respect in its tone. We propose that this conflict, orchestrated by a third party, ends here, Jax said. Right now. The Xyler commander disengages and returns to his core worlds to purge the traitors in his ranks. The Ascendancy fleet stands down and returns to your own space to cleanse your hierarchy of Xylos's insidious influence. And we, along with our network, will provide both of you with the intel, the resources, and the surgical strikes needed to do it. The Xyler commander looked at Jax. You would help us defeat our own traitors? We would help you neutralize a threat that affects us all, Lena clarified, and ensure that neither of your empires falls to internal corruption. The Grand Conclave leader's helmet seemed to stare directly into Jax's soul. And what do you gain from this, human? Control of Vorith's Gap. That is merely a strategic buffer, Jax replied. What we gain is a stable galaxy, one where we are not pawns but partners. We gain peace, Grand Conclave leader, something neither of you has managed to secure for centuries. Silence stretched on the comms, thick with the weight of galactic power contemplating an utterly unprecedented proposal. Finally, the Grand Conclave leader's voice, layered but now with a chilling undertone of steel, spoke. High Prelate Xylos will be brought to account. This alliance is temporary. For now, it serves a purpose. The Xyler commander, his face etched with grim determination, nodded. I will cleanse my house, and I will remember this, human. The channels cut. Lena slumped against the console, exhaling slowly. They actually listened. They are going to fight their own people because of us. Jax watched the Ascendancy fleet begin its slow, orderly retreat, followed by the Xyler commander's frigate turning and accelerating back toward its own space. They are going to fight their own people because we gave them a better target than each other, and because we showed them a common enemy within their own ranks, something they were too blinded by their hatred to see. Days bled into weeks. Vorith's Gap, once a battleground, became a covert hub of intelligence and strategic support. Jax and Lena, from the bridge of their destroyer, directed their network with surgical precision. Ascendancy Special Forces, working with human-provided intel, stormed Xylos's hidden compounds, unearthing more layers of betrayal. Xyler loyalists, guided by Lena's decrypted data, rooted out the rogue general's cells within their own command structure. It was messy, brutal work, but it was their messy, brutal work, and it was done with a speed and efficiency that both galactic powers begrudgingly acknowledged. The Grand Conclave leader sent a single, encrypted message to Jax weeks later. Xylos has been neutralized, his network dismantled. The Ascendancy owes you a debt. The Xyler commander's message came shortly after. The rogue general is no more. My hegemony is fractured, but it will rebuild. Your intervention was unexpected, perhaps useful. The war, for now, had been averted. The two empires, reeling from internal purges, retreated to lick their wounds. Vorith's gap remained neutral, but now it was more than just a buffer. It was a new power, a human-run hub of information, trade, and quiet influence. Ships from both empires, once hostile, now cautiously approached, seeking safe passage or a discreet word or perhaps even a job. Lena stood beside Jax on the bridge of their flagship, watching the slow, deliberate work of their salvaged fleet bringing order to the debris field. "We are still here," she said, a hint of wonder in her voice. "Against all odds, we did not just survive, we thrived." Jax looked out at the vastness of space, at the endless stars and the possibilities they held. "We showed them what harshworlders do when pushed. We adapt, we learn, and we take what we need to ensure our continued existence." He paused, a subtle shift in his gaze. "But this galaxy, it is still immense. And there are whispers, deeper than any Xylos or Grand Conclave leader could concoct. Whispers of powers that predate even these empires, stirring in the dark." Lena's expression turned serious. "You mean there is something worse out there?" Jax finally allowed himself a small, knowing smile, the kind that only someone who had truly seen the abyss could possess. "Always, and we will be ready." Did you love seeing humanity not just survive, but thrive against a whole galaxy? Hit that like button right now. Want to dive deeper into more human-focused sci-fi adventures? Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and tell us in the comments below, what was your favorite? Humanity? Heck yeah! Moment from Jax and Lena's incredible journey.